Hello there, my RPG lovers, and welcome to another video. It's been almost 20 full years since the last Gothic game got released, which concluded the Gothic Trilogy.
I know that, you moron!
Then we had to wait until 2019 until we finally got to see something new related to this old franchise. Gothic Remake is just behind the corner. The release date is less than 2 months away at the time of recording this video, or to be more specific, it's coming out on June 5th. That's the date when we finally get to play a new Gothic RPG.
I guess that's one way to put it.
Well, technically it's a new game, but it's also a remake, obviously, so it's going to follow the original design philosophy of Gothic 1. Alchemia Interactive, the studio behind this game, has released a bunch of dev diaries where they talked about all of the major changes, as well as things that will largely remain the same in the remake. I've been covering a lot of these updates in the past, but now is the perfect time to sum up everything in one big video. The latest update is for a brand new questline in the game that I will also cover in this video.
Makes sense.
And ultimately, this video should help you decide if you want to buy this game or not, or what to expect from the game in general. Speaking of buying the game, the pre-orders for Gothic Remake are now available, and the reason why that became a bit more interesting is Gothic 1 Classic on consoles. So if you pre-ordered the digital version of Gothic 1 on PS5 or Xbox consoles, you should be able to play the original Gothic 1 on consoles right now. If you don't wanna do that, you'll have to wait for July 28 in order to buy Gothic 1 on PS5 and Xbox consoles, which is a bit confusing if you ask me. Here are the official release dates for Gothic Classic Trilogy on consoles. July 28 for Gothic 1 Classic, September 29th for Gothic 2, and November 24th for Gothic 3. And what has to be one of the biggest surprises for me personally is the announcement for Gothic 3 on Nintendo Switch, which is kind of crazy. I never expected to see that. But that's a topic for another video. Now let's focus on the remake.
Sounds like a tricky job.
I heard he's dead.
What's in it for me?
The original Gothic 1 had a lot of features that were way ahead of its time, but nowadays a lot of those features are considered as normal. However, this old game still ticks a lot of boxes that most new RPGs don't even consider for some reason. And even after all of the technical advancements we had in the past 20 years, you'll struggle to find another RPG with so many immersive features. That's probably one of the reasons why we got the term Gothic-like, that's being used for some new and upcoming RPGs. And hopefully, Gothic Remake will manage to replicate the same feeling by not just including but also expanding all of the features from the original. In fact, expanding the existing features is one of the main goals of the remake. So what does Gothic-like actually means? Well, I think you're probably going to get a slightly different answer depending on who you ask, but I think all Gothic fans could agree on a couple of things. Immersive and believable open world and a great zero to hero character progression would be a couple of those things. An RPG that doesn't hold your hand and a simulated open world that doesn't revolve around the player character. Gothic Remake will obviously try to do something similar, but it also aims to expand on the existing formula in a couple of different ways. So what's changed, what stayed the same, and what's new in the remake?
I'll go take a look.
The remake has a chance to fill in some gaps and expand the story in general, which is exactly what Alchemia is trying to do. A lot of things got lost in translation when it comes to the English version, because the original language for the game was German. The remake has completely reworked English text and translation, and Alchemia said they also patched a lot of plot holes that were the result of the bad translation. English voice acting in the original game was just not very good, apart from some iconic characters like Diego, Zardas, and a couple of more characters. But the remake seems to have high quality English voice acting in general.
I don't care who you are. You're green blood, and I'm the guy who takes care of you lot. Let's leave it at that.
On a more interesting note, the remake plans to improve orcs by including a brand new language for them. The orcs in the original game were not heavily involved in the story itself, apart from a couple of specific quests in later chapters. The player's interactions with orcs were not so common outside of fights, and there were only a handful of orcs in the entire game that you could talk to. Considering that orcs are literally the main reason why everything is happening in the game, this didn't make a lot of sense. Gothic Remake has a brand new language for orcs, and I'm guessing they will also have some brand new side content as well. Alchemia also added some brand new orc characters, like the female orc called Urnat's Krog. And we could see the nameless hero talking to this orc in Orcish language, which is interesting. If I had to guess, this probably means we'll have to learn the Orcish language as a skill. That's what's logical to me, but maybe the game will simplify this when you get to interact with orcs in general, and you can do it automatically, I'm not sure. That being said, I also hope the remake managed to retain the same menacing and dreadful feeling when it comes to hostile orcs. Fighting orcs in the original game for the first time was very scary, and it was a big difficulty spike. That's a very important thing to get right in the remake, much more important than including a brand new language for them, if you ask me. I mean, the new language can be an amazing attention to detail, but the gameplay side of things when it comes to orcs is way more important to me. Alchemia also added some brand new content related to some old NPCs. Veleia and Mixir would be a good example of this. Veleia didn't have much to say in the original game, she was essentially just a background NPC, as well as Mixir. However, if you played modded Gothic 2, you probably know there was a great total conversion mod called Veleia. So this is going to be interesting to see, especially to people who played that total conversion mods. Gothic Remake is supposed to have around 20 to 25% of brand new side quest contents. They also expanded the existing quests in the game with way more options, and the remake is supposed to be a much bigger game in general. I had the chance to watch a full video about a brand new side quest with Mixir, so this is probably the best example of what we can expect from the side content in the remake. The nameless hero gets a very simple quest to help one of the water mages in the new camp. It's supposed to be one of the quests that will help you to join the new camp if you choose to play with them. You must help Mixir the water mage to retrieve a special book by fighting some fire lizards and diving in the river to unlock a chest. First of all, I think these fire lizards seem very weak in general, which was definitely not the case in the original.
Time for a lesson.
The player doesn't seem to be a very low level in this clip, but even so, fighting these fire lizards is a joke, especially if we compare them to fire lizards from the original game, from the same place. On the other side, Mixir is a capable mage who deals a lot of damage to the lizards, and he even freezes them at one point, so that certainly makes it way easier. I just hope the balancing in this game is going to be close to the original at least, but that's yet to be seen. They mentioned before how they plan to expand the underwater exploration in the game. Diving is a proper skill now that you can learn and improve, and you can loot items underwater as well. This is one of those examples, but I'm pretty sure there will be a lot more of these underwater sections to explore, in a lot of old and some new areas that the remake plans to add. Overall, there is not much to say about this particular side quest, it's very straightforward and simple. But they also teased another side quest about opening the book that you got from the chest that's sealed by the spell.
However, this spell is also what keeps this tome shut. But that is a task for another day.
I see.
So judging from this quest, I'm guessing we can expect to see a bunch of similar side content in the remake. After all, 20 to 25% of new side content is a pretty big number. And I think that's exactly what the game needs, especially in later chapters. While I'm very curious about the new content in the game, I'm also very excited to see those new options for the existing contents. Alchemia claims they added a lot of new variations to the original quests, so if this turns out to be true, it's going to improve the game quite a bit. They said it's not just about having an extra dialogue option here and there. These new options for old quests are supposed to have legit new choices and consequences. Some of the important events in the game are also supposed to affect the whole colony. For example, the Sleeper Invocation event is going to affect NPC schedules and how NPCs behave in general. This was one of the major events within the main story of Gothic 1 that didn't feel so important because nothing changed. Speaking of events and NPCs, the remake aims to improve these systems in a couple of different ways. Gothic 1 has such an advanced and complex AI system, up to the point where Alchemia could simply copy and paste it in the remake, and it would still be way better than 90% of new RPGs on the markets. And everyone who played the original game knows that I'm not over-exaggerating here. So my concerns are not related to new features they plan to add, I'm more worried about old features. Old features they have to implement as the baseline to even consider the remake faithful to the original. As long as they manage to do that, I won't care that much about these additional features, I'll just see them as welcoming attention to detail. But what are those features anyway? For example, they added the option for NPCs to carry objects, NPCs will react to weather effects, and what's possibly the most interesting little feature are some dynamic events that can happen. For example, they mention how you can meet the guys who are traveling between the camps in real time on different parts of the map. So I hope they added more similar events in the game, because this will make the world feel more alive. NPCs are going to have some legit conversations in the background instead of just random gibberish. I'm guessing they are still going to have some random sentences to some extent, but now they also talk about specific things. This is definitely a welcoming change and attention to detail, and NPCs are even going to comment on current events in the world as well as your actions. Then we have the dungeons, caves, and some areas that are expanded in order to make them more interesting in general. We're getting some brand new abilities for exploration like climbing and diving that I mentioned before. If I had to guess, we'll probably have to learn these new skills by finding specific NPCs. Climbing is interesting, but it looks like it's going to be very limited to certain parts of the map. Even so, it can be a great little addition to the exploration. Even though the original Gothic offered you immense freedom in the beginning, that was almost completely gone in later chapters and the game became way more linear. The remake will try to fix these issues by adding more choices and paths to take even in later chapters. I always hated how the original game handled the old camp in later chapters, so I hope they're going to offer us more role-playing options for that as well. Some areas, like the ancient monastery, got expanded, while the Sleeper's Temple and the Tower of Zardoz got a major facelift. All three camps in the game look very faithful to the original, I would say, but I guess the Brotherhood camp got the biggest overhaul in terms of the visuals. When it comes to combat, Gothic Remake has some brand new ideas and features, but the general philosophy of it should remain the same. If you never played these games before, that means that your character is going to be very weak in the beginning, and until he learns at least some basic skills from the trainers, it's just better to avoid most fights, unless you're fighting some very weak enemies. Learning some basic skills in the game was never that hard, but this also depends on the camp you're going to join, and you have to find NPCs that are willing to teach you. The point is, when you start learning new skills, your character gets completely new animations and attacks, and he instantly becomes more useful in fights. So there is a very nice mix of character progression and some light skill-based abilities. But the remake is looking to put a much bigger emphasis on skill-based abilities, at least it seems so. That sounds like a good idea, and it's a logical thing to do in a modern action RPG. But the remake has to make sure that the progression system is on point as well, in order to create an enjoyable gameplay experience in general. Ranged combat and magic played a major role in Gothic as well. Playing as a mage was a pretty unique experience, and it took a while to get this playstyle going. Judging from all that we could see so far, magic looks pretty cool in the remake. The visual effects are great, and casting spells in combat seems less static compared to the original. The nameless hero can move quite a bit now while casting spells, and the same can be said about the ranged gameplay in general. You can use the free aim mode for bows and crossbows now, which was simply not possible in the original. We can see from some clips that there is a lot more moving around while casting spells, but it seems like stronger spells are still going to require you to stand in one place. Moving around while casting weaker spells should make the combat more fluid in general, but then again, the balancing has to be on points. Otherwise, the combat can become very cheesy, although that would be faithful to the original. Gothic 1 used a simple target lock for ranged weapons and a hit chance that was affected by your dexterity. That's obviously completely gone in the remake, but I think the free aim mode for ranged weapons is much better anyway. Then again, the ranged combat in Gothic 1 made sense, and the progression system itself made it feel pretty good. So even though I love the free aim mode gameplay style for ranged weapons, it's not exactly the better option by default. A lot of things have to click together in order to make a satisfying experience for this and every other playstyle in the game. Now, all of this looks great, and these new animations are perfectly fine, if you ask me. We could see some bad hitboxes here and there, but those clips are pretty old by now, and Alchemia probably fixed those issues. But like I said before, I'm more worried about the balancing and the progression system in general. The character progression system in Gothic was one of the biggest reasons for such a satisfying gameplay experience. Each new level, stat increase or a new weapon would instantly make a difference in combat. It allowed you to gain more confidence in fights and try to kill stronger NPCs. This is going to be even more important than the combat system itself, in my opinion. Most action RPGs nowadays follow a similar set of rules when it comes to mechanics, and Gothic Remake is no different. It's going to have a parry system and a dodge, although even the original game had similar mechanics. Gothic 1 was definitely more gear-based than skill-based, that's for sure. The remake is definitely going to try and be more skill-based, judging from everything we could see so far. The demo I played last year had some issues on the fundamental level, mostly with the controls, but Alchemia addressed those issues in a couple of updates. The melee combat looks way better and smoother in general after one massive update, but I would have to try it out for myself in order to know this for sure. Although it's probably safe to assume that if it looks better, it probably feels better as well. I just hope the controls are snappier in general, because even though Gothic 1 was pretty clunky at times, the responsiveness of the controls was never an issue. The biggest change within the combat system itself has to be the combo system. You could perform a combo with a melee weapon in Gothic 1 by just timing your hits with a single button. Well, that's not true actually, you would have to hold one button and press another one for the combo, but still, you would use one button for attacking. The idea was to simply time your hits at the end of animation and your character will perform a combo. The length of the combo and the amount of hits you have depends on your weapon skill. You would unlock more hits when your weapon skill is higher. The remake has some cool animations for master skill levels, and this seems appropriate for the combat in Gothic. However, they made some changes to how you perform these combos. Instead of just spamming one button, now you have to use the combination of different buttons in order to perform a combo. It seems like some combo moves can only be performed by pressing different buttons within the combo. And that was not the case in the original game. It looks like this could add another dimension to the melee combat system. It's definitely a great idea, on paper at least, but it's yet to be seen how well it works in practice. The melee combat system was pretty simple in the original, even with all the upgrades you could get. So trying to expand this combat system is a logical step forward. I just hope it turns out to be good in general. I really like the animations for the master level two-handed skill that we could see in one of the combat updates they did in the past. So the original design idea for the combat and progression is definitely still there, I just hope it feels good to play. Like I said, it's not just about the combat system, they need to make sure that everything else is good enough in order to create that recognizable Gothic-like feeling. In other words, the balancing has to be on point, the world needs to feel dangerous, and the progression system has to be good as well. All of that combined with the combat will determine how the gameplay experience in Gothic Remake feels. Gothic 1 had some underwhelming boss fights, and the remake will try to improve this. There are only a handful of fights in the entire game that could be even considered as boss fights, so it's going to be interesting to see if these fights are any better. We could see some short clips of the Minecrawler Queen, some fights in the Sleeper Temple against elite orcs, and I hope the last boss fight in the game is actually a boss fight. As for some other gameplay features, we have a brand new crafting system for armors. The original game had a very simple, but a very enjoyable armor progression system. You could only get new armor sets once you progress enough with the faction, and each upgrade felt like a massive step forwards. The remake plans to expand the same armor system by allowing the players to modify different armor pieces. Gothic Remake has 3 different armor slots, and all armor pieces can be modified, for a price. These armor modifications will improve the stats and the looks of the item. But what's even more interesting are some special skills you can get. They only mentioned the skill that could reduce the fall damage, so I'm wondering if you're going to get more similar skills. That would definitely add another layer of depth within the gameplay.
I guess that's one way to put it.
Last but certainly not least, I want to talk a little bit about the art direction of Gothic Remake. To be honest with you, I think this is a lose-lose situation when it comes to remakes in general. Gothic 1 is a 20+ years old game, so trying to replicate the same artistic style is borderline impossible if you don't want to make your new game look outdated. So the best thing you could do is try to go for the same vibes and art direction. Gothic 1 was a dark and a gloomy game with a brownish color palette. The remake obviously tried to do something similar here with desaturated colors and high contrast. I think the remake looks decent in general, but not all Gothic fans will agree with me. What's perhaps a more interesting topic, there will be some major differences and new additional features related to visuals. For example, the remake will have a lot more weather effects that will almost completely change how the game feels to explore. Gothic 1 was very limited when it comes to this because of the obvious technical limitations. We are also getting much darker nights in the remake. I think that's totally appropriate for a game like Gothic, and this will affect the night exploration quite a bit. Nights in these games don't only change the visuals, but they also affect how NPCs move around or behave in general. Speaking of NPCs, the new face models in the remake seem to be one of the best things about the visuals of this game. Another major reason why Gothic 1 created such an amazing atmosphere is the music by Kai Rosenkrantz. Kai is also working on the updated music for the remake, which is just perfect. We're going to get updated versions of the same tracks, as well as some new tracks, which I'm really excited for. And that will be everything I wanted to cover in this preview video.
Makes sense.
Feel free to tell me if I missed something important that new and old players should know before they decide to buy the remake. I also suggest waiting for my full review. We're getting very close to the release date and I will make more videos, especially if I get my hands on the preview version of the game. I'll also make a lot of Gothic content in the following month in order to get prepared for the remake, so stick around for that. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more content like this. And if you want to go a step further, consider supporting your boy by becoming a YouTube channel member or a Patreon. Huge thanks to all my current supporters, and I'll see ya in the next one.